The candle flame on your table right now is hollow, empty in the middle, a glowing shell around nothing. You've looked at fire your whole life and never known this secret. That small dance of light contains physics so strange that once you see it, you'll never look away the same way. Tonight, we're going inside a flame. This is a place for calm curiosity, so settle in. Let your breathing slow. We're about to discover what fire actually is. If you enjoy these quiet journeys through science, please tap that like button and subscribe. We're building a community of people who love falling asleep to wonder. And I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment and let me know. Look closely at any candle flame and you'll see it's not one color. The bottom glows blue, not the sky blue of a summer day, but a deep, intense blue like the heart of a sapphire. This blue base is the hottest part, where the candle's wax vapor first meets oxygen and combustion begins. Above that blue, the flame turns orange and yellow, softer and warmer. These aren't random colors, they're temperature speaking in light. But here's what most people never realize. That flame is hollow inside. The center of a candle flame contains almost no light because there's almost no oxygen there. The flame burns only at its outer edges where fuel meets air. If you could somehow freeze a flame and slice it in half, you'd see a glowing shell around a dark core. The candle's wax melts, travels up the wick, turns to vapor, and burns only where that vapor reaches oxygen at the flame's surface. Why does fire always point up? You've probably never questioned it because it seems so obvious. But there's beautiful physics happening. Hot air is lighter than cold air. The flame heats the air around it, and that hot air rises, pulling the flame upward into a teardrop shape. The rising hot air creates a current, drawing fresh cool air in from below to feed the fire. This cycle never stops as long as the candle burns. It's called convection, and it's the same principle that creates weather systems and ocean currents. On the International Space Station, in the absence of gravity, flames don't point anywhere. They form perfect spheres, tiny blue hovering balls of fire. Without gravity to make hot air rise, the flame has no direction to follow. It simply expands in all directions, burning until it uses up the oxygen around it, and then it dies. Here on Earth, that constant upward pull of hot air keeps our flames alive and dancing. That dance, that flicker you find so mesmerizing, is the visible signature of this convection. The flame isn't perfectly steady because the air around it isn't perfectly still. Tiny currents in the room, your breathing, the heat from your body, all of these disturb the delicate balance. The flame responds instantly, bending and swaying, its shape changing dozens of times each second. Your brain finds this movement hypnotic because it's complex but not chaotic, always changing but never random. The temperature changes dramatically across the small height of a flame. That blue base burns at around 1400 degrees Celsius. The yellow tip, cooler at about 800 degrees. The air just above the visible flame can still be 600 degrees, hot enough to ignite paper. All of this contained in something smaller than your thumb. A perfect, self-sustaining system of chemistry and physics, burning away the hours while you watch. This hollow, layered, dancing flame is doing something remarkable. It's showing you matter, transforming before your eyes. Fire speaks in color. Every flame you've ever seen has been telling you its temperature, and you probably never knew you were listening. The reds and oranges and blues aren't decorative. They're a language written in physics, and once you learn to read it, you can look at any fire and know exactly how hot it burns. Start with the coolest fire, if we can call anything burning cool. Red flames and glowing coals sit at the bottom of the temperature scale, around 500 to 800 degrees Celsius. This is the color of dying embers in a fireplace, of coals in a barbecue pit. Red light has the longest wavelength in the visible spectrum, and it's the first color that hot objects emit when they start to glow. Heat something enough, and it will always glow red first. Push the temperature higher, and the color shifts. Orange flames burn hotter, around 800 to 1000 degrees. This is the temperature of wood fires, of burning paper, of most of the flames you see in everyday life. Orange is actually a mixture of red and yellow light being emitted at the same time. The hotter the flame, the more it moves toward yellow, adding that second color to the mix. Yellow flames mark another step up in heat, typically between 1000 and 1200 degrees Celsius. Candles burn in this range. Oil lamps. The yellow comes from tiny particles of unburned carbon in the flame. Particles so small and so hot that they glow. These particles are what create most of a flame's light. They're the reason a candle can illuminate a room. Pure combustion without these particles would give almost no visible light. Then comes the blue. Blue flames are the mark of complete, efficient burning, and they're hot. The blue base of a candle flame reaches 1400 degrees. A gas stove's blue flame can hit 1900 degrees. Blue light has a shorter wavelength than red or yellow, and it requires much more energy to produce. When you see blue in a flame, you're seeing near perfect combustion, fuel and oxygen meeting in ideal proportions. Go even hotter and flames turn white. Welding torches burn white, reaching temperatures over 2500 degrees Celsius. At these extremes, the flame emits so much energy across so many wavelengths that our eyes see it as white, the combination of all colors. This is the same reason stars can be white. They're so hot, they're emitting every color at once, overwhelming our perception into seeing pure, brilliant white. This color progression tells us something deeper about the universe. Everything, not just fire, glows when it gets hot enough. Heat a piece of iron and it goes from black to red to orange to yellow to white, following the same pattern. Stars follow this pattern too. The coolest stars burn red, around 3000 degrees at their surface. Our sun burns yellow-white at 5500 degrees. The hottest stars burn blue-white, their surfaces raging at 30,000 degrees or more. The connection isn't coincidence, it's the same physics. When atoms get hot, their electrons absorb energy and jump to higher energy levels. When those electrons fall back down, they release that energy as light. The hotter the atoms, the more energy they have, the shorter the wavelength of light they emit. Red, orange, yellow, blue, white. The universe has one temperature scale, one color code, and fire is just one place where we can see it in action. This is why firefighters can tell how hot a fire is just by looking at it. Why a blacksmith knows when iron is ready to forge by its color. Why astronomers can determine a star's temperature from 100 light years away without ever touching it. The color tells the story. Temperature is light, and light is temperature, and fire burns in every shade between red and blue, painting heat in colors we can see. But fire, for all its mystery and power, depends on just three simple things. Remove any one of them, and fire cannot exist. This is the fire triangle, and it's one of the most elegant principles in all of chemistry. 3 elements, 3 requirements, no exceptions. The first side of the triangle is fuel, something that can burn. Wood, wax, paper, gasoline, natural gas, even metals under the right conditions. Fuel is any material that can combine with oxygen and release energy in the process. Most fuels are made of carbon and hydrogen, molecules that form strong bonds with oxygen. When those bonds form, energy pours out as heat and light. The second side is oxygen. Fire is a chemical reaction between fuel and oxygen, and without oxygen, that reaction cannot happen. Earth's atmosphere is about 21% oxygen, which is enough to support combustion, but not so much that everything spontaneously catches fire. In an atmosphere with more oxygen, fires would burn hotter and faster. In an atmosphere with less, fires would struggle or die. Our 21% is a balance that allows both fire and life to exist. The third side is heat. Fire needs energy to start, a spark, a match, lightning, friction, intense sunlight through a lens. Once burning begins, the fire generates its own heat, which keeps the reaction going. But that initial energy is essential. Without it, fuel and oxygen can sit together indefinitely, and nothing will happen. Your furniture is touching oxygen right now, and not burning, because there's no heat to start the reaction. Take away any one of these 3 elements, and fire dies instantly. Smother a flame with a blanket, and you remove oxygen. Blow out a candle, and you cool the flame below the temperature needed to vaporize wax. Use all the fuel and the fire staves. Fire extinguishers work by attacking one or more sides of this triangle. Foam extinguishers coat the fuel, separating it from oxygen. Carbon dioxide extinguishers displace oxygen from the air. Water extinguishers cool the fire below combustion temperature. Every fire suppression method ever invented is just a way to break this triangle. Ancient humans discovered this truth through experience. They learned that wet wood won't burn because the water absorbs the heat that should be vaporizing the wood. They learned that covering a fire with dirt smothers it by blocking oxygen. They learned that small fires die when you stop feeding them fuel. These weren't abstract concepts to them. These were survival skills, hard-won knowledge that meant the difference between warmth and freezing, between cooked food and starvation, the fire. Triangle applies at every scale. A candle flame and a forest fire follow the same rules. A match and a rocket engine. A campfire and a star. Those stars use different fuel and don't need oxygen because they create their own energy through fusion. But here on Earth, in our world of chemical fires, the triangle holds true. There's something beautiful about this simplicity. Fire seems chaotic and wild, but it's actually following strict chemical rules. It can't break them. It can't exist without all 3 elements. This is why fires in space are so different. In the weightlessness of orbit, hot air doesn't rise because there's no up. Flames can't pull in fresh oxygen through convection. They form spheres, burning the oxygen immediately around them, then dying. The triangle still applies, but without gravity to help supply oxygen, fire struggles. Understanding the triangle changes how you see fire. That campfire isn't just burning, it's consuming fuel, breathing oxygen, maintaining temperature. Stop any one of those processes and the fire ends. The triangle is why you can hold your hand near a candle flame without burning. You're outside the zone where all 3 elements meet. It's why firefighters cut trees ahead of a wildfire, removing fuel from the path. It's why an astronaut couldn't light a match in a vacuum. No oxygen means no fire, regardless of fuel or heat. 3 simple requirements, holding together every flame that's ever burned. Imagine a world where fire only came from the sky, where lightning struck and forests burned, and early humans watched from a distance, terrified and fascinated. Fire existed for billions of years before humans, but it took us a long time to make it our own. The story of that first captured flame is the story of humanity beginning to control nature instead of just surviving it. We don't know exactly when or where it happened. The archaeological evidence goes back at least 1 million years, maybe longer. Charred bones, burn, earth, ash layers in ancient caves. These are the fingerprints of controlled fire, proof that someone, somewhere, kept a flame alive intentionally. But before controlled fire came something simpler and more dangerous, carrying fire. Picture this: lightning strikes a tree. The tree burns. Other trees catch fire. Animals flee. But some group of early humans stays close, watching. They see that the fire provides warmth on cold nights. They notice that predators won't cross the fire line. Perhaps they discover that meat dropped into the fire tastes different, better, and someone makes a decision that changes everything. They take a burning branch from the natural fire and carry it home. This was revolutionary. Carrying fire meant you didn't have to wait for lightning. You didn't have to hope for a natural fire nearby. You could have fire whenever you needed it, as long as you kept it burning. But keeping fire alive is harder than it sounds. It needs constant feeding, constant attention. Let it die, and you might wait weeks or months for another lightning strike, another chance. So, the first firekeepers were created. People whose job was to maintain the flame, to never let it go out. In some cultures, this became a sacred duty. The firekeeper held the survival of the group in their hands. They fed the fire through the night. They protected it from rain. They carried coals carefully when the group moved to a new location. The eternal flame wasn't just symbolic. It was necessary. Making fire from scratch came later, and it was even more transformative. Friction methods, striking rocks together to create sparks, using fire drills or fire plows to generate enough heat to ignite tinder. These techniques are difficult. They require practice, patience, the right materials. But once humans mastered them, we became independent. We didn't need to carry fire anymore. We could create it anywhere, anytime. Different cultures developed different methods. Some used bamboo, sawing, one piece against another, until friction created an ember. Some used hardwood drills, spinning a stick against a board until the wood dust ignited. Some discovered that certain rocks, when struck together, produce sparks hot enough to light dried grass. Each method was adapted to local materials, local conditions. Firemaking became a fundamental skill, taught from parent to child, generation after generation. The psychological shift was enormous. Before fire, humans were prey. We were food for big cats, for bears, for anything larger and stronger. We couldn't see at night. We couldn't stay warm in winter. We ate raw food that sometimes made us sick. Fire changed all of that. Fire kept predators away. Fire provided light when the sun set. Fire warmed caves and cleared land, and made food safer to eat. With fire, humans stopped being just another animal competing for survival. We became something different. There's evidence that some human species could use fire, but couldn't make it. Neanderthals definitely used fire. We found their hearths, their burned bones. But whether they could create fire, or only maintained natural fires, is still debated. The ability to make fire, to create it from nothing but friction and patience, might be one of the things that made Homo sapiens uniquely successful. We weren't smarter in every way, but we had fire, and fire was power. Fire didn't just protect us. It changed our bodies, the way we look, the way we think, the very structure of our anatomy. All of it was shaped by our relationship with flame. Cooking with fire might be the single most important technology in human evolution. More important than tools, more important than language. It made us human. Look at your teeth. Compared to other primates, your teeth are small. Your jaw is weak. A chimpanzee's jaw can crush bones that would break every tooth in your mouth. We lost that strength because we didn't need it anymore. Fire predigests food. Cooking breaks down tough plant, fibers and denatures proteins in meat, making both easier to chew and digest. Our ancestors, who cooked their food, could survive with smaller teeth and weaker jaws. Those traits were passed down. Over thousands of generations, our faces changed shape. Our digestive system changed too. Raw food takes enormous energy to digest. A chimpanzee spends hours each day eating, and even more hours sitting still, while its massive gut processes all that raw plant matter. Humans can't do this. Our intestines are shorter. Our stomachs are smaller. We couldn't survive on a raw food diet in the wild, because our bodies have evolved to expect cooked food. Fire made our digestion more efficient, and that freed up energy for something else. That something else was our brain. Your brain is about 2% of your body weight, but uses 20% of your energy. That's an enormous metabolic cost. No other animal invests so much energy in brain tissue. We can only afford this expensive brain because cooking, food made our digestion cheaper. The calories we saved on digestion went to building and maintaining a larger brain. Fire, quite literally, made us smarter. There's more. Cooked food is safer. Parasites die in heat. Bacteria die in heat. Toxins break down in heat. Early humans eating raw meat often got sick from parasites and pathogens. Those who cooked their food had a survival advantage. They lived longer. They stayed healthier. They had more children. Natural selection favored the fire users, and eventually we became a species that can't thrive without cooking. But fire's influence goes beyond biology. Campfires created social spaces. Picture it, a group of early humans gathered around a fire after dark. The fire provides light and warmth. Predators stay at the edge of the light, not daring to come closer. For the first time in evolutionary history, humans have leisure time after dark. And what do people do when they sit together with nothing urgent demanding their attention? They talk. Language might have evolved around fires. Stories certainly did. The oldest human stories, myths, legends, oral histories were probably shared around flames. The fire became the center of community. You know where your group is because you can see the fire. Children learn from elders by the firelight. Bonds form. Culture develops. The circle of people around a fire is one of humanity's oldest social structures. Even today, even with electric lights and central heating and gas stoves, we still gather around fires. We have fireplaces we don't need. We sit around campfires on camping trips. We light candles at dinners and celebrations. We put fire in birthday cakes and weddings and memorials. This attraction to flame isn't cultural, it's biological. It's genetic memory from 1 million years of evolution shaped by fire. Fire made us tool users. Once you control fire, you can heat treat wood to make it harder. You can create charcoal that burns hotter than wood. Eventually, you can smell metal from ore, creating bronze and iron and steel. Fire opened the path to metalworking, which opened the path to complex tools, which opened the path to agriculture and cities and civilization. Every technology we have traces back to fire. We are the species that burns things. We cook our food. We burn fuel for warmth. We burn coal and oil and gas for power. We launch rockets on controlled explosions. We are, in a very real sense, the fire ape. It's our defining trait, more than language, more than tools, more than anything else. Fire made us, and we carry that history in every cell. So, what is burning actually? What's happening at the molecular level when wood turns to ash and light and heat pour out? The answer is beautiful and strange. Burning is molecules breaking apart and reforming, a violent dance of atoms, finding new partners and releasing energy in the process. Take a piece of wood. Wood is mostly cellulose, long chains of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms bound together. These bonds contain energy, like a compressed spring. When you heat the wood, you give those molecules energy. They start vibrating faster. They break apart into smaller molecules and individual atoms, and once freed, they meet oxygen from the air. Carbon atoms bond with oxygen to form carbon dioxide. Hydrogen atoms bond with oxygen to form water vapor. These new bonds release energy because the carbon dioxide and water molecules are more stable than the original wood molecules were. That released energy is what we experience as heat and light. The flame you see is this energy being thrown off in visible wavelengths. You're watching pure energy escaping from chemical bonds. This process has a name: rapid oxidation. Oxidation means combining with oxygen. Rapid means it happens fast enough to create flames. Rust is also oxidation, iron combining with oxygen. But rust happens slowly, over days and weeks, so there's no flame, no dramatic release of heat. Burning is just fast, rusting, if you want to think of it that way. The chemistry is similar, only the speed changes. Here's something that surprises most people. When you burn wood, most of the wood doesn't stay behind as ash. The wood vanishes into the air. A log that weighs 5 kilograms might leave behind 50 grams of ash. Where did the rest go? It became gas, carbon dioxide and water vapor, floating away as invisible products of combustion. The ash is just the minerals and impurities that can't burn, the tiny fraction of the wood that doesn't contain carbon or hydrogen. This confused people for centuries. They could weigh a log before burning and weigh the ash after, and the ash was lighter, much lighter. Where did the weight go? Some thought fire consumed weight, that burning made things lighter. They were wrong, but not completely wrong. The weight didn't vanish, it just changed form from solid to gas. If you could capture all the carbon dioxide and water vapor from burning wood, and weigh it together with the ash, you'd find the total weight is actually slightly more than the original log. The extra weight comes from the oxygen that combined with the carbon and hydrogen. Mass is conserved, always. It just changes form. The color of the flame tells you what's burning. Blue flames mean pure combustion, fuel and oxygen, meeting in perfect ratios. Yellow and orange flames mean unburned carbon particles are glowing in the heat. Those particles are why wood fires produce soot. The carbon doesn't completely burn. Tiny specks of it fly away as smoke. And when they cool, they become the black coating you see on chimney walls. A perfectly efficient fire would have no soot, because all the carbon would become carbon dioxide. Temperature matters enormously in combustion. Below a certain temperature, the reaction can't sustain itself. The flame needs heat to vaporize fuel and to keep the oxidation reaction going. Above certain temperatures, the combustion becomes so efficient that flames turn. Blue and soot disappears. This is why a blue flame is the goal in furnaces and engines. Blue means hot, which means efficient, which means you're extracting the maximum energy from your fuel. The products of combustion vary with the fuel. Burn pure hydrogen in oxygen and you get only water vapor, no carbon dioxide, no soot, just water. Burn methane and you get carbon dioxide and water. Burn wood and you get carbon dioxide, water, and dozens of other compounds in tiny amounts. Burn plastic and you get toxic chemicals. Fire doesn't care about safety. It just recombines whatever atoms you give it, according to chemistry's rules. Understanding combustion was one of humanity's great scientific achievements. For most of history, people thought fire was an element, something fundamental and irreducible. The discovery that burning is just rapid oxidation, just atoms switching partners, came in the 1700s and revolutionized chemistry. We realized fire wasn't a thing. It was a process, a transformation. Matter changing from one form to another while energy poured out. And with that understanding came power. Fire destroys forests. But here's the paradox. Some forests need fire to survive. For certain ecosystems, fire isn't a disaster. It's a requirement. A forest that never burns becomes sick, overgrown, vulnerable. Fire, strange as it sounds, keeps these forests healthy by periodically burning them to the ground. Walk through a pine forest that hasn't burned in decades. The floor is thick with dead needles, fallen branches, layers of dry fuel building up year after year. Young trees grow so close together, they compete for light and water. The forest becomes dense, dark, stressed. Then, lightning strikes. The accumulated fuel ignites. The fire spreads fast and burns hot, much hotter than if the forest had burned more regularly. This is the danger of fire suppression. Trying to prevent all fires creates conditions for catastrophic ones. But in forests adapted to fire, periodic burning is beneficial. The fire clears away the undergrowth and the dead wood. It returns nutrients locked in dead matter back to the soil as ash. It opens space for new growth. It resets the forest to an earlier stage, creating the open, park-like conditions that many fire-adapted species prefer. This isn't destruction, it's renewal. Some trees have evolved to not just survive fire, but require it. Lodgepole pine cones are sealed with resin and won't open unless heated to temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius. Forest fire provides that heat. The cones open, releasing seeds onto freshly burned ground, mineral-rich soil with no competing plants. The baby pines grow in full sunlight with minimal competition. The fire that killed the parent trees created perfect conditions for the next generation. Giant sequoias, the largest trees on Earth, also depend on fire. Their bark is thick and fire-resistant, up to 2 feet thick on ancient trees. Fire burns away the competing trees, but leaves the sequoias standing. Fire clears the forest floor, so sequoia seeds can reach soil. Fire opens the sequoia cones. Without fire, sequoia forests fill with shade-tolerant trees that eventually outcompete the giant sequoias. Fire keeps the sequoia forests being sequoia forests. Animals adapt to fire too. Some beetles can detect forest fires from 80 kilometers away. They fly toward the flames, mate in the burned area, and lay eggs in fire-killed trees. Their larvae feed on the dead wood, safe from most predators because the forest is still too burned for larger animals. Certain flowers bloom only after fire, taking advantage of the cleared ground and the ash-enriched soil. The fire brings them to life. Indigenous peoples understood this long before Western science did. Many cultures practiced controlled burning, deliberately setting fires during the right season to clear undergrowth, promote certain plants, and maintain healthy forests. These weren't random fires. They were carefully managed, part of a sophisticated relationship with the land. When these traditional burning practices were stopped, many forests became more fire-prone, not less. Modern forest management is relearning these lessons. Controlled burns are now used to reduce fuel load and prevent catastrophic fires. Fire crews deliberately ignite fires under careful conditions. Cool days with high humidity and light winds, burning away the undergrowth while the forest is too wet to sustain a major fire. It seems counterintuitive, fighting fire with fire, but it works because it mimics the natural fire cycle these forests evolved with. The cycle is ancient. Fire clears, plants return, trees grow, fuel accumulates, lightning strikes, fire clears again. Some forests have been through this cycle thousands of times. The ecosystem is built around it. The trees are adapted to it. The soil depends on it. Remove fire from the equation, and you don't save the forest. You change it into something else, something that can't sustain the species that evolved there. This is why ecologists talk about fire regimes, the natural pattern of how often and how intensely fire burns in an ecosystem. Every fire-adapted ecosystem has its own regime. Some burn every few years, some every few decades. Understanding and respecting these regimes is crucial for conservation. Fire isn't the enemy of forests. Lack of fire or fire at the wrong time, that's the real threat. You are on fire right now, not metaphorically, literally. Inside every cell of your body, fuel is combining with oxygen to release energy. The same chemistry as a candle flame, the same oxidation reaction, just happening slowly, in controlled steps, inside microscopic structures called mitochondria. You are a carefully managed fire that's been burning since the day you were born. This process is called cellular respiration, but it's easier to understand if you think of it as slow burning. Take glucose, a simple sugar from the food you eat. Your cells break it down step by step, pulling off atoms, combining them with oxygen, harvesting the energy that releases. The end products are carbon dioxide and water, exactly the same products as burning wood or wax. The chemistry is identical. The only difference is speed and control. A candle flame burns glucose instantly, explosively, all the energy released at once as heat and light. Your cells burn glucose gradually, capturing the energy in small packets, storing it in molecules called ATP that can power everything your body does. Moving your muscles, thinking thoughts, maintaining your body temperature, growing and healing. All of it powered by this controlled burn happening in trillions of cells simultaneously. This is why you need to breathe. Oxygen isn't optional for complex life. It's fuel for the fire inside you. Every breath brings oxygen into your lungs. Your blood carries that oxygen to every cell. The cells use it to burn glucose. The carbon dioxide produced gets carried back to your lungs and exhaled. Breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide. You're a living combustion engine, inhaling fuel, exhaling waste products. This is why you need to eat. Food is fuel. Your digestive system breaks food down into simple molecules like glucose, and those molecules get distributed to your cells to be burned. Stop eating and you run out of fuel. Your cells start burning stored fat, then muscle tissue, desperately seeking anything that can be oxidized for energy. The fire must be fed or it goes out, and when the fire goes out, you die. Your body temperature, that constant 37 degrees Celsius, is heat from this internal burning. You're warm-blooded, not because you're special, but because you're constantly on fire inside. The metabolic processes generate heat as a byproduct, just like any fire. When you're cold, your cells burn fuel faster, producing more heat. When you're hot, they slow down, producing less. Your body is constantly adjusting the burn rate to maintain temperature. This is why exercise makes you hot and makes you breathe harder. Your muscles need more energy when working, so they burn fuel faster. That means they need more oxygen, so you breathe faster to supply it. They produce more carbon dioxide, so you breathe faster to expel it. And they generate more heat, so you sweat to cool down. All of it is consequence of the internal fire burning hotter and faster. The mitochondria, the structures inside cells where this burning happens, are fascinating. They have their own DNA, separate from the DNA in the cell nucleus. That's because mitochondria were once independent bacteria, billions of years ago. They were captured by larger cells in a partnership that benefited both. The bacteria got a safe place to live and a steady supply of nutrients. The larger cells got a power source, a built-in furnace that could burn fuel efficiently. This partnership, this ancient merger, is why complex life exists. Without mitochondria, without the ability to burn fuel efficiently, life on Earth would still be simple. Single cells floating in water, limited in what they could do. Mitochondria gave cells access to enormous amounts of energy. Energy that could power movement, sensation, thinking, complexity. Every animal, every plant, every fungus has mitochondria. We're all powered by these tiny internal fires. The fire inside you has been burning for as long as you've been alive. It burned before you were conscious. It burns while you sleep. It will burn until the moment you die. It's the fundamental process of being alive, the engine that makes everything else possible. And it's the same chemistry, the same physics, the same oxidation that makes a candle glow. The universe has one way to release energy from fuel, and both you and the flame on your table are using it. You're not separate from fire. You are fire, slow and controlled and beautiful. Everything we've talked about so far assumes fire needs oxygen from the air. But there are fires that burn underwater, fires that burn in vacuum, fires that burn without any external oxygen source at all. These chemical fires break the usual rules, and they reveal something deeper about what fire actually is. Thermite is the classic example. Mix powdered aluminum with powdered iron oxide. Add heat to start the reaction. The aluminum strips oxygen atoms away from the iron oxide so violently that the temperature reaches 2,500 degrees Celsius. The iron oxide provides all the oxygen the reaction needs. No air required. You could light thermite in a vacuum chamber or underwater, and it would burn just as fiercely because it's not pulling oxygen from its surroundings. It brought its own. This is different from regular fire in a fundamental way. Regular fire is fuel meeting oxygen from the environment. Thermite is fuel and oxygen already mixed together, just waiting for activation energy. Once started, the reaction is self-sustaining and incredibly hot. Hot enough to melt through steel. hot enough to weld railroad tracks. The heat comes from the same source as any fire, chemical bonds breaking and forming, energy releasing. But the chemistry is self-contained. The military discovered thermite's potential early. In World War II, thermite bombs were used to destroy equipment and create fires that couldn't be easily extinguished. Water doesn't help. Foam doesn't help. Depriving it of oxygen doesn't help because it has its own oxygen. The only way to stop thermite is to physically separate the reactants or wait for the fuel to run out. This made it both useful and terrifying. But thermite isn't the only self-oxidizing reaction. Many chemicals carry their own oxygen. Gunpowder works this way. The potassium nitrate in gunpowder provides oxygen to the charcoal and sulfur. When ignited, the reaction happens so fast it's an explosion. But the chemistry is the same principle as thermite, just faster. The fuel and oxidizer are premixed. Add heat and the reaction takes off. Rocket engines use this principle. In space, there's no air, no oxygen, so rockets carry both fuel and oxidizer. Liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, mixed and burned in the combustion chamber. The reaction produces enormous heat, and the expanding gases provide thrust. It's fire burning in the vacuum of space, impossible by normal fire rules, but following the deeper principle that fire is just oxidation, and oxidation can happen whenever fuel meets oxygen, regardless of where that oxygen comes from. Greek fire, the legendary weapon of the Byzantine Empire, might have used similar chemistry. Historical accounts describe it burning on water, unable to be extinguished by conventional means. The exact formula was lost, but modern chemists suspect it contained ingredients that carried their own oxygen, or that reacted violently with water itself, creating fire from the reaction. Water didn't put out Greek fire, it made it worse. Imagine the terror of enemy sailors, watching fire spread across the waves toward their wooden ships. These fires remind us that fire isn't about flames and heat as much as it's about oxidation. Flames are just one way oxidation manifests. When oxidation happens fast enough and releases enough energy, we get fire. But the essential process, atoms combining with oxygen and releasing energy, that can happen in countless ways. Some produce flames we can see. Some produce heat without visible light. Some happen so slowly we don't even recognize them as related to fire. The rust forming on iron is slow oxidation. The reaction between aluminum and iron oxide in thermite is fast oxidation. They're the same chemistry at different speeds. This is why aluminum doesn't rust the way iron does. Aluminum reacts with oxygen so readily that it immediately forms a thin, protective oxide layer. That layer prevents further oxidation under normal conditions. But give it enough heat, mix it with iron oxide, and that protective quality vanishes. The aluminum becomes violently reactive, stripping oxygen from the iron oxide, releasing all that stored energy at once. Understanding these self-oxidizing reactions changed warfare, changed industry, changed space travel. We learned we could take fire anywhere by bringing oxygen with us. We weren't limited to Earth's atmosphere anymore. Fire could work in any environment, even hostile ones, even the vacuum of space, as long as we provided both halves of the reaction. This knowledge expanded what fire could be, where it could burn, what it could do. Why can't you look away from a fire? You've probably noticed this. Put a flame in front of someone, and their attention locks on it. Conversations quiet. Eyes fix on the dancing light. Even in a room full of electric lights, a single candle commands attention. This isn't learned behavior. It's something deeper, something wired into human psychology at a fundamental level. Scientists have studied this. They call it the campfire effect. When people sit around a fire, their blood pressure drops, their heart rate slows. They become more relaxed, more open, more social. The fire creates a sense of safety and community. But why? Why does flickering light have this effect on us? Part of the answer is evolutionary. For hundreds of thousands of years, fire meant safety. Fire kept predators away. Fire meant warmth on cold nights. Fire meant cooked food and social gathering. Our ancestors, who felt drawn to fire, who found comfort in it, survived. Those who feared fire or ignored it had worse odds. Natural selection favoured the fire watchers, and we inherited that attraction. But there's more to it than just evolutionary history. Fire has properties that make it inherently mesmerizing. The movement is complex, but not random. Flames follow physics. They're shaped by air currents and heat and fuel supply, but they never repeat exactly. The pattern is what mathematicians call fractal, similar at every scale. Zoom in and you see the same kinds of shapes and movements you see when zoomed out. Human brains find fractal patterns deeply engaging. This is also why we find waterfalls and clouds and coastlines captivating. They're all fractal. Natural fractals activate something in our visual processing that artificial patterns don't. We can watch them for hours without getting bored because there's always something new to see. But it's all variations on the same theme. Fire is one of the most dynamic fractals in nature. It's constantly moving, constantly changing, but always recognizably fire. The color and light play a role too. Fire produces warm light, heavy in red and orange wavelengths. These wavelengths don't suppress melatonin the way blue light does. Sitting by firelight in the evening doesn't disrupt your sleep cycle the way staring at a phone screen does. Your brain interprets firelight as natural end-of-day light, the kind of light our ancestors saw as the sun set. It prepares you for rest. There's a social component as well. Fire creates a clear boundary between inside and outside. The lit circle around the fire is the social space. Everything beyond is darkness and unknown. This boundary helps define the group. You know who's part of your circle because you can see their faces in the firelight. Strangers stay in the darkness. The fire marks territory without being aggressive about it. Modern research has found that the campfire effect is strongest when the fire is the primary light source. A candle in a bright room has less effect than a campfire under the stars. When fire is the main source of light, when it's keeping the darkness at bay, that's when our ancient responses activate most strongly. We relax, we bond, we tell stories, we feel safe. This is why humans put fire in places we don't need it. Fireplaces in houses with central heating, candles at restaurants with electric lights, birthday cakes with candles will immediately blow out, fire pits in backyards. We're not using fire for warmth or cooking. We're using it for the psychological effect. We're giving ourselves access to that ancient comfort, that evolved response that says fire equals safety and community. Some researchers think fire watching might have been humanity's first form of meditation. Long before formal meditation practices, before religion or philosophy, humans sat and watched flames. The hypnotic quality of fire naturally quiets the mind. Thoughts slow down. Awareness narrows to the present moment. The fire becomes the only thing. This is a meditative state, achieved without training or effort, just by doing what humans have done for 1,000,000 years. Children are especially drawn to fire. They want to touch it, watch it, play with it. This attraction is so strong that teaching fire safety is one of the first crucial lessons of childhood. That attraction isn't misbehavior, it's instinct. Fire was important to our ancestors' survival, so natural selection made us find it fascinating. The challenge of modern parenting is channeling that natural curiosity safely, rather than suppressing it entirely. Even people with no fireplace and no access to campfires still seek fire. They watch videos of fireplaces online. They download apps that simulate crackling fires. The demand for these digital fires proves the power of the attraction. We'll even accept a fake fire, a recording, if it's the only fire available. The need to watch flames is that strong